Welcome back. One of the most disruptive and widely adopted technologies is the social media. Social media is relatively new, less than 20 years in existence, but has changed the way we live, socialize, and communicate. Historically, media meant organized transmission from the few formal and identifiable sources to many known and unknown, and to anyone who had access. But when Facebook was started in 2004, the intention was to connect the students in and around Harvard University in the United States. Then it spread quickly around the world, with variants being introduced along the way. Today we have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, and many others. They have enhanced social connections across borders, and they have empowered people across cultures. They have allowed friends and family to connect, strangers to share ideas, politicians and leaders to mobilize support, and they have disrupted and destroyed lives, unfortunately, along the way. Today, many people spend hours on social media in very many unproductive ways, and some bullying complete strangers and others tracking and manipulating unsuspecting children. Social media was generally introduced for social good, but has a very bad and evil side of destructiveness. My guests are Shaw Kamunga, who's on Twitter and uses social media for good, and the CEO of Ditseho Media, Tebogo Ditseho, who specializes in the social media business. Gentlemen, a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure.
And I think it's the right time for us to be talking about social media. People resign because of social media, get fired because of social media, and so it goes. But let me start first with the business side of it. It has even led to you, Tebogo, expanding outside the borders of South Africa to Rwanda to start your business there. And as I said, your business is social media business. So what happened in Rwanda, and what is the appetite and interest in social media on the continent?
Well, thank you very much, Pratim. You know, social media has been a game changer in the advertising and the marketing industry. Before the advent of social media, when it came into South Africa, and that was around 2007 when it really started to gain traction, social media allowed us to challenge the traditional media space, and I'll tell you how. We had companies which would be able to say, you know, we have 50 years, 30 years, 40 years experience in the industry, and unfortunately, as someone who had just graduated from university, it wasn't possible to compete, from an experience perspective. But with social media, now it shows you, that it's possible, because you cannot say you have 30 years experience in social media. So we were able to become one of the quick adopters in social media, build an audience, and use it to build our business and to affect positive change. Now, throughout the time in 2012, when we started Read a Book Essay on social media, it blew up to become the biggest book club online in Africa. And we also registered Ditseho Media on social media, and I started to build my brand as an entrepreneur. Now, that is basically how we broke the borders down, and the president of Rwanda, President Paul Kagame, followed me on social media, and people of Rwanda started to follow, and then we saw that there was actually a market there that we could look into.
And of course, I know Shaw Kamunga as a result of social media myself, and somehow over time felt and thought that I know him, or I know what he stands for. And that's why, Shaw, you are my guest as well on the show. And the interesting thing, following the conversation I had with you most recently, is that your home originally is Zimbabwe, but today you are one of the most influential voices here in South Africa, thanks to social media. And that's wonderful, that's remarkable. And is this as a result of your work environment or your profession as well, that you got involved in social media?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I think it was a natural progression, because I trained as a journalist. That's my background.
Trained as a journalist in Zimbabwe?
In Zimbabwe,
yeah.
Yes. So obviously I'm a consumer of information. I read a lot, and I also adopted social media as a means of informing myself, and subsequently became to inform people also about what's happening around the world, and more specifically in South Africa, and use it for good. Like I want to be known for using social media for good. And I think Twitter, for me, it has been quite a journey of discovery, I must say, in the sense that you can effect change, positive change. You can encourage people, you can inform people, you can educate people. But like you said in the introduction, obviously, social media has got its own negative side to it, bullying, rudeness, and just unnecessary obtuse behavior by people.
But I suppose it's because, you know, people can create a personality of whatever kind once they get on social media. Let me stay with you for a moment. That in your case, you decided that you are going to use social media, specifically Twitter, for social good. When did you make that realization or decision or determination that you are going to use social media for good, and you have achieved some positive results as a result thereof?
It was late last year when I was just tweeting about the challenges facing unemployed people, particularly graduates, and then realized that I could do something for them. I mean, I'm not an employer, but at least I can try to help. And I decided to organize a session where we would have what we call mentor a graduate. So I just posted on social media last year on Twitter, say, anyone like-minded who wants to join me, I want to mentor some graduates on how to dress, how to talk, how to conduct an interview, how to write a CV. And lo and behold, the response was quite overwhelming. And the first session we had was in January this year, when we had almost 30 young graduates unemployed who came over to Santon, thanks to Balaworld, who did offer a venue. And subsequently, we did a second one again, based on the response from the first session. And since then, I've used social media to help. I've offered to help with CV writing for graduates. And I think 2 months ago, I did also launched a campaign to help poor prospective undergrads at UNISA to pay their application fees. You'll be amazed how difficult it is for someone to raise 105 rands to pay for an application fee for varsity. So I just posted on social media and say, guys, let's help people register for UNISA. And
the response was positive?
It was massive. I think we did, at the last count, it was more than 60 students whom we helped.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now Teboho, in your case, I mean, you talk about starting your business on social media, right? But the thing is, many people might think that it's easy. You just get on Facebook or Twitter and start a business and off you go. It's not as simple as that, is it?
It's very difficult. Starting a business is like raising a child. The business becomes that child, you know, and sometimes I tell my employees that if you don't take care of this child, you can't just say, I'm sorry. There are consequences that come with that, you know, and it takes time. You need to be very patient. But I think what's important is, you know, having a vision, understanding what is the end goal and how we're going to achieve it, you know, to simplify things. And social media has enabled us to have agency. So before social media, it would have been very difficult for us to put out an advertisement. You know, if I was having a speaking gig or if we decided to release company news, you'd have to rely on a journalist to then filter that information. And unfortunately, not all of the information would be newsworthy, but it would be worthy of, you know, your audience's attention. And so we use social media in order for us to disseminate important company information. But also, I think when you look at the platform, the principles of marketing remain. It's not necessarily that we change the principle, it's just the medium. So you remain customer-centric. You cannot go on social media and always advertise yourself. You know, it's more about creating an experience and adding value to the lives of your audience, because if you do that, they are more likely to add value to your organization. And more than that, I think it's also, you know, in South Africa, we're looking at transformation in the corporate sector, but we're also looking at cultural transformation. And in that sense, we are able to create a new culture of this is the new African CEO.
But here's the point, and I will go to other parts of business and how social media impacts that. Talking about Africans. Yeah. In South Africa, we still have the challenge problem of xenophobia. And I want to add that it's not unique to South Africa as much as when we discuss it, we talk about it as if it's a unique phenomenon here, but it's something that happens elsewhere in the world as well due to different socio-economic pressures and the orientation of a particular people. But sure, and Teboho, I want to hear your views on this one. To what extent has social media broken down the borders and connected people across cultures and across borders?
Well, it's very interesting. It's quite a paradox, Tim, because you expect social media to break down those barriers you're talking about. But I found my own experience on social media is that people are still, they're still closed, you know. They still default to their own, what they know most, you know. And yet social media is an opportunity to actually learn about other countries, you know, what's happening in any country in Africa, for example. Then you have a better appreciation of what's happening there, and you can also comment and discuss intelligently, you know. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Yeah, very few people that I interact with can actually prove to me that actually they're actually using social media to learn about other countries. And it also determines whom you follow. Say on Twitter, for example, I've always seen that the quality of your interaction and your knowledge and information depends on whom you follow. You see, so if you make a conscious effort to say, okay, let me just Google Rwanda. Who is who in Rwanda? Who is who in Mozambique? Who is who in Zimbabwe, etc. And then you begin to follow them. Then that's how you start to break down those barriers of ignorance.
Yeah, and in your case, your experience, Teboho?
Well, I think that I'll agree with Mr. Kamanga. You know, if you look at social media, it has been an amplifying platform for what is already happening in society. So it's like a magnifying glass that is held to your own face. It just makes it bigger. You know, so if there's xenophobia, you'll see it on social media. If there's tribalism and racism, you will see it. You've seen all these incidences of racism. Social media has not ended racism. So what we need to do is have a deliberate and proactive strategy in order for us to deal with our social ills proactively. So we must use the platform to, as Mr. Kamanga said.
Let's share your experiences, right, on how to use social media for good, whilst looking at the negative side of social media and the dangers thereof, because parents sometimes, you know, have abrogated the responsibility to monitor and educate their children on how to use social media responsibly. We'll be back in a moment and talk to us on social media, of course, using the hashtag the Modise Network.